When I was searching for my late husband's necklace, the only thing I had left of him, my daughter said without even looking up from the cutting board, "The necklace has been sold. I needed the money for a vacation." I'm Agatha Winthrop. I'm 67 years old. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I stood very still in my own kitchen, in the house I'd lived in for 40 years, and I felt something inside me go cold. Then I called the pawn shop to get it back, and the man on the phone said, "Ma'am, you won't believe what we found when we opened the locket on that pendant." That secret changed everything I thought I knew about my family. If you're listening from somewhere far away, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this has traveled, and please, stay with me until the end. Before I tell you what happened next, let me take you back to that morning, the morning everything broke. It was March 17th, Henry's birthday. Nearly 3 years since he'd passed, and I still woke before dawn on this day, the same way I had throughout our 42 years of marriage. 5 o'clock, the house dark and quiet around me. My hand reached for the nightstand drawer before my eyes were fully open. Muscle memory, the body remembering what the heart refuses to forget. The velvet box sat where it always sat, cream-colored, soft at the corners from years of handling. I lifted it out, held it in my lap, and opened it the way I always did on days like this. Slowly, like unwrapping something sacred. The box was empty. I stared at the cream satin interior. My fingers pressed into the little groove where the chain usually rested, that slight indentation worn into the fabric from decades of a gold necklace lying in the same spot. Nothing. Just the ghost of what should have been there. Henry's necklace. The 14-karat gold chain with the heart-shaped locket he'd clasped around my neck on our wedding day, June 14th, 1980. I was 23 years old and he was 25, and when he fastened that clasp, his hands trembled so badly I had to help him. I wore it every single day for over 40 years. To the grocery store, to my shifts in the emergency room at Banner University Medical Center, to Lydia's birth, to every Thanksgiving and Christmas, and ordinary Tuesday in between. I wore it the day they told Henry his cancer was terminal. I wore it to his funeral. After he died, I couldn't wear it anymore. It felt too heavy against my skin, like it carried the weight of every day we'd never have. So I put it in the velvet box, in my nightstand drawer, and I only took it out on days when I needed to remember his face clearly. His birthday, our anniversary, the day he passed. Today was supposed to be one of those days. I pulled the drawer out completely, dumped the contents onto the bed. Reading glasses, a small flashlight, a bottle of melatonin, a prayer card from Henry's service. No necklace. I got on my knees, and at 67, getting on your knees is a commitment, and checked under the dresser. Dust and an old receipt from Walgreens dated 2 years ago. My chest tightened in a way I recognized. I'd felt it only once before with this specific quality of panic. In room 412 at the hospital, those last hours with Henry, when his breathing changed and nothing I did, 25 years of emergency nursing and nothing I did, could stop what was coming. I searched the closet, patted down coat pockets, checked shoeboxes on the upper shelf, ran my hands along the back of every drawer. The bathroom next, medicine cabinet under the sink behind the towel rack, Q-tips scattered across the tile floor like tiny white accusations. Where was it? Where was it? I checked impossible places. The nightstand drawer I'd already emptied twice, behind the headboard, under the mattress. My hands shook harder now, and I pressed them flat against my thighs to make them stop. I was a woman who had kept her composure while a teenager bled out from a car accident on a Friday night in the ER. I did not shake, but this was not a stranger's emergency. This was Henry being taken from me again. 42 years of marriage, and that necklace was all I'd kept. His clothes, donated to Goodwill 3 months after the funeral because Lydia said the closet full of his shirts was morbid. His books, given to the Scottsdale Public Library because Derek said they were taking up space. His garden tools, still rusting in the shed out back because I couldn't bear to touch them and couldn't bear to give them away. But the necklace, I kept that. It was the last warm thing. I walked downstairs, each step deliberate, one hand on the railing, not because I needed the support. My body was fine, strong for my age, the kind of strong you get from decades of 12-hour shifts on your feet, but because I needed the steadiness. I needed to hold on to something solid before I faced what was waiting below. The living room looked like it had been colonized. Derek Caldwell, my son-in-law, sprawled across my couch, the sage green sectional Henry and I had picked out together at Pottery Barn in 2012, with his feet up on the armrest, shoes still on, a bag of Lay's Classic balanced on his chest. The television blared some ESPN broadcast, a commentator screaming about a playoff game. Derek didn't look up when I entered. He was 45 years old, once a regional manager for a hardware chain called Build Right, fired 4 years ago for what he vaguely called corporate restructuring, and what I suspected was something less flattering. Since then, he'd been looking for the right opportunity, which appeared to involve my couch and my cable subscription. I stepped over Brooke's shopping bags clustered near the bottom of the stairs. 3 bags from Forever 21 and 1 from Sephora, purchased God knows how. Brooke was my granddaughter, 23, perched on the love seat with her phone 2 inches from her face, complaining to someone about being stuck in Phoenix, about the heat, about wanting to get back to her friends in California. She didn't look up either. I remembered when she was 4 years old, running across this same living room with a fistful of dandelions from the backyard, yelling, "Grandma, Grandma, I picked you flowers." That child felt like a different person entirely. In the kitchen, Lydia stood at the counter. My daughter, 43 years old, my only child, the baby I'd held against my chest in the delivery room at 3:17 in the morning while Henry cried happy tears in the chair beside my bed. She had one hand on her phone and the other gripping a chef's knife, chopping vegetables with a precision that felt almost violent. Thunk, thunk, thunk. "Lydia," I said. "I'm busy, Mom." She didn't look up. "It's important. Henry's necklace is—" "Check your room. You probably forgot where you put it." The knife kept hitting the cutting board. Thunk, thunk, like punctuation. "I did check my room," I said, and I worked to keep my voice level, the way I used to keep it level when a patient's family was panicking in the ER waiting area. Calm, measured, in control. "I've checked everywhere. The necklace is gone." She sighed. That particular exhale she'd perfected over the past 2 years since she and Derek and Brooke had moved in. It was a specific sound, not quite annoyance, not quite pity, but something in between that said I was an inconvenience, a burden she'd graciously agreed to shoulder, the sound a person makes when they've decided you're less than them but want credit for tolerating you anyway. "Nobody wants your old stuff, Mom. It was your father's, the only thing I kept." "Then you should have been more careful with it." I stood there, watching my daughter chop celery into violent little pieces, and something in my chest went cold. Not hot anger. I want to be clear about that. Cold, like the temperature dropping right before a desert storm rolls in, that sudden stillness in the air when you know something bad is about to happen. "Lydia, please." I made myself say it quietly. I owed her that much. One more chance to be the person I kept hoping she still was. "I need to know what happened to it." She finally stopped chopping, set down the knife, turned to face me, and her eyes held no warmth at all. Hadn't in years, really. But I'd been fooling myself, hadn't I? Telling myself this was still my daughter, Henry's daughter. "Fine," she said. "I sold it. Dessert something pawn shop over on Thomas Road." The words entered my ears but didn't arrange themselves into meaning. Not immediately. Sold. My daughter sold Henry's necklace. "You what?" "We needed $800 for Hawaii. You said no when I asked, so I found another way." Her voice held no apology, no recognition that she'd crossed a line so far behind her she couldn't even see it anymore. She picked up the knife again, resumed chopping. Thunk, thunk. From the living room, Derek's voice drifted over, lazy and satisfied, the voice of a man who has never once questioned whether he deserves the comfort he's consuming. "It was just sitting there, Agatha. Henry's gone. Dead people don't need jewelry." He didn't even sit up to say it. Kept his eyes on the television, scratched his stomach through his t-shirt, reached for another handful of chips. The casual nature of it, that's what got me. If he'd been angry, if he'd been confrontational, I could have met that. I'd met confrontation 1,000 times in the ER, patients swinging, families screaming. But this wasn't confrontation. This was dismissal. The complete, comfortable certainty that what they'd done was obvious and reasonable and not even worth discussing. On the stairs, Brooke laughed, that bright, empty sound. "Grandma, you're being dramatic. It's just a necklace. Mom got us an awesome vacation out of it. I looked at her, really looked. 23 years old, Henry's granddaughter, and she had the same flat expression as her mother. When had that happened? When had the dandelion girl disappeared? Or, and this thought was worse, had she been disappearing slowly, year by year, and I'd just refused to see it? Your grandfather gave me that necklace on our wedding day, I said quietly. I wore it for over 40 years. Brooke shrugged, already turning away, phone back to her ear. Well, now someone else gets to wear it. Circle of life or whatever. I stood in my kitchen, in the house Henry and I had bought in 1985 for $67,000. The house we'd filled with nearly 40 years of memories. Pencil marks on the doorframe tracking Lydia's height. The dent in the hallway wall from when Henry tried to move the bookshelf by himself. The kitchen tile I'd picked out the summer before his diagnosis because I'd wanted something cheerful, something yellow, something that looked like sunshine, even on bad days. I stood in that kitchen and looked at 3 people, my daughter, her husband, her daughter. They looked back with the collective expression of people waiting for a minor inconvenience to remove itself from their afternoon. And then, I need to tell you this because it matters. I saw something, just for a moment. A flicker across Lydia's face as she turned back to the cutting board. Not coldness, not calculation, something else. Something that looked, for just a half second, like shame. Her jaw tightened. Her grip on the knife shifted. And then it was gone, replaced by that hard, controlled mask she'd been wearing for years. I don't know if I imagined it, but I filed it away in the part of my brain that had spent 25 years reading patients' faces for signs of what they wouldn't say out loud. I turned without a word, walked back upstairs, closed my bedroom door with a soft click that felt somehow like the period at the end of a very long sentence. I sat on the edge of the bed. The empty velvet box sat on the dresser where I'd left it. I picked it up, opened it, closed it, opened it, closed it. The mechanical motion calmed something in me. Or maybe calm isn't the right word. Maybe it was something else entirely. A settling, a hardening, like wet concrete finally finding its shape. I hadn't broken. I'd broken nearly 3 years ago when Henry died. What happened that morning in the kitchen was different. It was clarity. The kind of terrible, clean clarity that arrives when you finally stop making excuses for people you love. They'd sold Henry's necklace for a vacation. Lydia had gone into my bedroom, into my private drawer, taken the one thing I treasured, and exchanged it for spending money. And Derek and Brooke saw nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all. My hands stopped trembling. I placed the box carefully back on the dresser and reached for my phone on the nightstand. Opened the browser. Typed, Pawn Shops Phoenix. I started calling. The first shop, Lucky Star Pawn on 7th Avenue, didn't have it. The woman who answered sounded like she'd rather be anywhere else. The second, Cash Express on Indian School Road, put me on hold for 6 minutes, then told me no. The third had closed permanently. Disconnected number. The fourth didn't answer. I let it ring 14 times. I counted. The fifth, Valley Gold and Silver, said they hadn't taken in any heart lockets that week. After the 5th call, I set the phone down. My hand ached from gripping it. My throat was dry. Through the bedroom door, I could hear Derek laughing at something on television, and Lydia's voice giving instructions to someone, Brooke probably, about what to pack for the trip. The trip they'd bought with my husband's necklace. I almost stopped. I want you to know that. I almost stopped calling. There's a voice that lives in you when you're 67 and you've lost the person who made the world make sense. A voice that says, let it go. It's just a thing. Henry would tell you to let it go. And maybe he would have. Henry was always better at releasing things than I was. He forgave easily. He moved on gracefully. When Lydia forgot his birthday 3 years in a row in her 20s, he just said, she's busy building her life, Aggie. Don't hold it against her. But then I remembered something else. The last time I saw Henry conscious, in room 412, his hand shaking as he reached for my collar, touched the locket, and whispered, keep it for me, Aggie. It belongs to you. I picked the phone back up. The 6th call changed everything. Desert Gold Pawn, this is Raymond. His voice was warm, unhurried, a hint of something southern underneath, softened by decades in the desert. I'm looking for a gold necklace with a heart-shaped locket, Sam said. It was sold to you yesterday, I believe. 14-karat gold. The inscription inside reads, Forever A and H. A pause. The kind of pause that has weight to it. Oh yes, Raymond said. I remember that piece. Beautiful craftsmanship. Pre-1990, if I had to guess. Are you the wife? My chest tightened. I am. My husband passed 3 years ago. I'm very sorry, ma'am. And he meant it. You spend 25 years listening to people in crisis. You learn to tell the difference between sympathy spoken and sympathy felt. Raymond Porter felt it. Ma'am, there's something you should know about that locket. I straightened on the bed. What do you mean? When I was examining it, standard procedure, checking the gold content, looking for damage, the locket opened. There's a tiny clasp on the side, almost invisible. Inside there was a small note, rolled up tight. I removed it carefully. Didn't want to damage it. The room tilted slightly. Not physically. I don't mean I was dizzy. I mean the world shifted, the way it does when a piece of information rearranges everything you thought you understood. A note? Yes, ma'am. Numbers written on it. Bank something. Over 40 years. Over 40 years of marriage. I had worn that locket against my skin every single day, and I had never known it opened. Henry placed it around my neck on our wedding day, and I had never once thought to look for a clasp, never tried to open it. I'd assumed it was solid gold, a sealed heart, beautiful and complete. Did you tell the woman who sold it? I asked. She was already gone. Honestly, she didn't seem to know the locket opened either. She was in a hurry. Came in, said she wanted to sell, took the $800 and left. Whole transaction was maybe 4 minutes. Of course, Lydia racing to convert my husband's jewelry into vacation money. She probably hadn't even looked at it closely. Just saw gold and dollar signs. I need to buy it back, I said. How much? I gave her $800, fair value for the weight. But the actual worth is closer to $1,200. It's 14 karat, and the craftsmanship is exceptional. Handmade, I'd say. Not mass-produced. I'll pay the $1,200. Can I come today? Come by any time before 6. I'll hold it for you. He paused. And ma'am, I won't resell this to anyone else. That piece belongs with you. I thanked him. Got the address. 4127 North Thomas Road, Suite B. Sat for a moment looking at the phone in my hand, feeling the strange weight of what I'd just learned. Henry had hidden something inside that locket. A note, bank information, something he'd wanted me to find, but only if I looked closely enough. Only if something forced me to really see. What else hadn't he told me? I drove to Midtown in a state that wasn't quite calm and wasn't quite panic. Something in between. The GPS guided me through streets I'd driven 1,000 times, but they looked different now, sharpened by purpose. Strip malls and auto repair shops and the occasional palm tree casting long morning shadows. Phoenix spreading out flat and beige in every direction, the mountains distant and indifferent. Desert Gold Pawn occupied a corner storefront at 4127 North Thomas Road, between a nail salon called Lucky Nails and a tax preparation office with a faded sign. Bars on the windows, but clean bars. A neat hand-painted sign above the door. Raymond Porter was smaller than I'd expected from his voice. Mid-50s, brown hair neatly trimmed with gray at the temples, reading glasses perched on his nose, hands that showed the calluses of someone who'd spent years handling metal and stone. He looked up when I walked in and somehow knew immediately. Mrs. Winthrop? That's me. Raymond Porter. He extended his hand. His grip was firm, but careful, the handshake of someone who understood that what he was about to return to me was more than merchandise. Let me get your necklace. He disappeared into a back room and returned carrying a small bundle wrapped in soft cloth. He unfolded it carefully on the glass counter, and there it was, Henry's necklace. The gold caught the fluorescent light and threw tiny reflections across the glass cases around us, like signals, like small bright promises. It looked exactly as I remembered it against my collarbone every morning for 4 decades. The chain slightly thinned in one spot where it had rubbed against my skin, the heart-shaped locket with its smooth, warm surface. The woman who sold it, Raymond said quietly. Early 40s, dark hair, seemed in a hurry. Didn't want to negotiate. I gave her $800 because that's fair for the weight, but I knew immediately it was worth more. Pieces like this, Handmade, old. They carry something that goes beyond gold content. He paused. She your daughter? I didn't answer that. Just pulled out my wallet and counted $1,200 bills onto the counter. Raymond had already prepared the paperwork. A receipt, a brief description of the item, dated and signed. He pushed a small white envelope across the glass. The note, he said. I put it in here for safekeeping. Didn't want it to get lost or damaged. Thank you, Raymond. Take care of it this time, he said gently. And then, as I turned toward the door, Ma'am, whatever's on that note, I hope it brings you something good. I drove 3 blocks before I had to pull over. My hands were shaking again. All the emotion I'd been holding back flooding in now that I was alone, and the necklace was back in my possession. I pulled into a shopping center parking lot, angled the car toward the afternoon sun, and sat with the engine running and the AC blowing cold air across my face. The necklace felt heavier than I remembered, or maybe I was lighter, hollowed out by the morning. I held it up to the light streaming through the windshield, turning it slowly, looking for the clasp Raymond had described. There, so tiny I'd never noticed it in over 40 years. A small indentation on the right side of the heart, no bigger than the head of a pin. I pressed it with my thumbnail. The locket sprang open. Inside rolled impossibly tight, a piece of paper no bigger than my pinky nail. I used my fingernails to extract it, unrolled it carefully against my thigh, pressing the curl out of it with my thumb. Henry's handwriting. Microscopic but unmistakable. That precise engineer's script I'd seen on blueprints and grocery lists and love notes left on my pillow for 42 years. Bank of Arizona, Box 4782. I sat in my car, staring at those 5 words, until the sun shifted and the windshield glare became too much and I had to close my eyes. Henry had a safety deposit box at Bank of Arizona, box number 4782. And in 42 years of marriage, 42 years of shared meals and shared beds and shared everything, he had never told me. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed with the necklace on my chest, right where I used to wear it, feeling the slight weight of the gold rise and fall with my breathing. The note sat on the nightstand, unrolled now, held flat by a small glass of water on one corner. I thought about Henry, not the idealized Henry, not the saint I'd been building in my memory for 3 years, polishing away his rough edges until he glowed. The real Henry, the man who was quiet when he should have spoken, who solved problems with systems instead of conversations, who loved me deeply but sometimes from a distance, like a man standing on the far side of a river waving. He wasn't a man who kept secrets, or I'd always believed that. 42 years, and now I was discovering he had a safety deposit box I never knew about. What else was there? The question wasn't suspicious, not the way it would be in a movie, where a hidden box means a hidden life. I knew Henry. I knew his heart the way I knew my own pulse. Whatever was in that box, it wasn't betrayal. It was protection. I knew that the way you know certain things without evidence, the way a nurse knows when a patient has turned a corner, the way a woman married 42 years knows the shape of her husband's love, even the parts he never showed her directly. Morning came slowly, gray light through the curtains, then gold. I showered, dressed in my good khakis and a blue button-down blouse, the one Henry always said brought out my eyes, and drove downtown to Bank of Arizona's main branch on Washington Street. The building rose 10 stories, glass and steel, the kind of structure that makes you feel small on purpose. I walked through the revolving door into a marble lobby that echoed with quiet conversations and the click of heels on stone. A young woman at the information desk looked up with a professional smile. Her name tag read Rebecca. "I need to access a safety deposit box," I said. "Of course. Do you have the box number and identification?" I laid everything on the counter. Henry's death certificate. I'd brought it on instinct, some part of me knowing I'd need it. My driver's license. My marriage certificate, which I'd grabbed from the filing cabinet at the last moment. Rebecca examined each document carefully, typed information into her computer. "The box was opened last in 2019, she said. "No activity since." 2019, 6 years ago. Henry was diagnosed in early 2022. He'd set this up 3 years before he got sick, before either of us knew what was coming. "My husband passed in 2022, I said. "He must have set this up before." Rebecca's professional mask softened slightly. Take all the time you need in the privacy room, Mrs. Winthrop. I'll walk you through the process. She led me through a heavy steel door into the vault room, walls of metal drawers from floor to ceiling, each with 2 keyholes. Quiet as a church, she used her key and the box number to slide out a long metal container, heavier than I expected, and guided me to a small windowless room with a table and a single chair. "I'll be right outside when you're finished," she said quietly, and closed the door. I sat alone with the metal box on the table in front of me, and I couldn't make myself open it. My hands rested on either side of it, feeling the cold metal, and I thought about Henry 6 years ago. His hair still thick then, his step still sure, coming to this same room, sitting in this same chair maybe, placing something inside this box, locking it away, walking out into the Phoenix sun and driving home to me, and never saying a word. "Why, Henry? What were you preparing for?" I lifted the lid. Cash. Stacks of $100 bills in white envelopes organized with rubber bands. I counted quickly. 5 envelopes, each containing what felt like several $1,000s. 20,000 at least. Maybe more. And underneath it all, at the very bottom of the metal box, a sealed envelope. My name in Henry's careful handwriting. Aggie. Not Agatha. Aggie. The name only he used. The name that meant I see you, all of you, the real you, the you that nobody else gets to know. I picked up the envelope, held it against my chest, closed my eyes. Then I broke the seal, unfolded 2 pages covered in Henry's handwriting, that neat measured script I'd seen on grocery lists and birthday cards and engineering blueprints for 42 years. And I began to read. "My dearest Aggie, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you found what I've hidden." The first line hit me like something physical. His voice came through so clearly I could almost hear it. That low, steady baritone, the slight pause he always took between thoughts, like a man choosing each word with the same precision he applied to bridge measurements and load calculations. "I saved this money over 30 years. Small amounts from each paycheck you never noticed. An extra shift here, a consulting fee there. Don't be angry with me for the secrecy. I did it because I love you, and because I know what's coming." I read faster, my hand trembling against the table's edge. "Lydia has always been difficult. You remember when she was 25 and demanded we pay for her wedding, all $43,000 of it, then didn't invite my brother David because he could only afford a modest gift? You said it was stress. I saw it for what it was. The way she treats people as transactions, the way nothing is ever enough. I remembered. Henry had been quiet about it. He was always quiet. But I'd seen the hurt in his eyes at the rehearsal dinner when David's empty chair sat at the family table. I'd made excuses. Mother-daughter tension. Wedding stress. Normal family friction. I was good at making excuses. 25 years in the ER teaches you to find rational explanations for irrational things. But Aggie, I need you to know something, and it's the hardest thing I've ever written. I think part of this is my fault. You remember the years I spent on the Flagstaff project? Then Tucson, then the bridge in Yuma. I was gone more than I was home when Lydia was small. And when I was home, I spent my time with you, with us, not with her. She grew up believing she came second to everything else. And maybe she was right. I wasn't there for her first day of school. I missed her 6th birthday. I missed the play where she was Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, and she never mentioned it again, but she never forgot it either. I'm not saying this to excuse what she'll do to you. What she'll do is inexcusable. But I want you to understand that our daughter's coldness didn't come from nowhere. It came from a little girl who felt unloved. And that's on me more than on you. My vision blurred. I set the letter down, pressed my palms against my eyes, breathed in and out until the tightness in my throat eased enough to continue. After I'm gone, she'll see you as nothing more than a resource to drain. Derek will encourage it. He's always been a user. You know that, even if you won't say it. And Brooke learns from her parents. These savings are for you, my dear. $27,000 to protect yourself when you finally see what I saw. Don't let them turn you into a victim. You're stronger than you think. Stronger than me, actually. You always were. I was the engineer, but you were the one who held everything together. You held that ER together for 25 years. You held our family together when I was too busy or too blind to help. You can hold yourself together now. Be strong. Live for yourself. The house, the money, everything. It's yours. You worked for it. Don't let them take it out of guilt or obligation. And Aggie, if there's still a part of you that wants to save Lydia, I understand. That's who you are. You save people. You did it every night for 25 years in that emergency room. But some people don't want to be saved. They want to be given to. I wish I could be there to protect you, but I trust you'll know what to do when the time comes. You've always been thoughtful, methodical, careful. Use those strengths now. And know that I love you more than anything in this world, more than bridges, more than buildings, more than any structure I ever designed. You were always my greatest work, not something I built, but someone I was lucky enough to stand beside. Forever yours. Henry. I sat in that small, windowless room at Bank of Arizona and read certain passages 3 times. The wedding incident, the warning about Derek, the confession about missing Lydia's school play, the instruction to be strong. But the part that broke me, the part that sent tears running silently down my face and onto the metal table, wasn't the warnings. It was the part where Henry blamed himself, where he said our daughter's coldness didn't come from nowhere, where he admitted he'd failed her as a father and asked me to carry that knowledge alongside everything else, because it made the whole thing so much more complicated than I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be simple: bad daughter, good mother, clear villain, clean justice. But Henry, even from beyond the grave, wouldn't let me have that simplicity. He was saying, yes, protect yourself. Yes, she's wrong. But also, we helped make her this way, and you need to hold both of those truths at the same time. I folded the letter precisely, placed it in my jacket pocket, over my heart, right where the locket used to rest. The cash stayed in the box, too much to carry safely, and I wasn't sure yet what I'd do with it. I stood, pushed the chair in, opened the door. Rebecca looked up from her desk. All finished, Mrs. Winthrop? Yes, thank you for your help. I walked through the marble lobby, my footsteps echoing. Outside, the afternoon sun hit me like a wall. Harsh, unforgiving, the particular phoenix brightness that makes everything look overexposed. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, staring through the windshield at the concrete wall of the parking garage, not seeing it. Seeing instead Henry at his desk in the evenings, working late, always working late. And now I understood that some of those late nights were him slipping money into envelopes, planning for a future where he wouldn't be there to protect me. Henry, always having my back. Even now, even from wherever he was. I touched the necklace under my shirt, felt the warm gold against my skin, pressed the locket gently with my fingertips and thought, I hear you, Henry. I hear you. The drive home happened on autopilot. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked different. Not physically. Same beige stucco, same terracotta roof, same prickly pear cactus Henry had planted the year we moved in, now taller than the mailbox. But something had shifted in how I saw it. Through the front window, Lydia on the couch, phone to her ear, laughing. Derek in Henry's recliner, the brown leather lazy boy I'd given Henry for our 30th anniversary, worn to the shape of his body. Brooke at the kitchen table, nail polish bottles everywhere. My house, my space. Occupied like conquered territory. I walked inside. Nobody looked up. I passed through the living room, up the stairs, into my bedroom. Closed the door. Stood at the window watching the sun sink toward the western mountains, the sky turning the color of copper and rust. The necklace in one hand. The letter against my heart. Be strong. Live for yourself. I whispered it back to the empty room. I will, Henry. I promise. Outside, the desert sky burned itself out in silence. And something inside me, something that had been sleeping for nearly 3 years, buried under grief and guilt and the weight of a daughter who had forgotten how to love, woke up. I didn't sleep that night either, but this time, it wasn't grief keeping me awake. It was purpose. I sat at the desk in my bedroom, the old oak desk Henry had found at an estate sale on Camelback Road years ago, its surface scarred with decades of use, but solid as the day it was made, and I pulled a yellow legal pad from the drawer. At the top of the first page, I wrote in block letters, March 17th, actions to be taken. Below it, I began a list. Number 1, document everything. My engineering husband would have been proud. Or maybe not proud. Maybe relieved. Because what I was doing was exactly what he'd trained himself to do over 40 years of bridge design. Identify the problem, gather data, develop solutions, execute systematically. I didn't have his degree, but I had 25 years of emergency room nursing, which teaches you something engineers don't always learn, that the difference between life and death is often documentation. The chart you fill out correctly, the vital sign you record at the right moment, the note you make when something doesn't look right, even when everyone around you says it's fine. I woke before dawn on March 18th. The house lay silent. My family, I still called them that, though the word felt increasingly inaccurate, slept off their late night of television and complaining. I moved through the hallway like a ghost in my own home, each footstep deliberate and soft. In the living room, I photographed everything with my phone. Derek's work boots by the front door. He didn't work. His jacket thrown over the couch arm. 4 remote controls scattered across the coffee table, which had been shoved 3 feet from its proper position to accommodate his sprawl. Chip bags. Empty beer cans on the side table, rings of condensation staining the wood Henry had sanded and refinished by hand in the summer of 2003. The bathroom. Brooke's makeup covered every inch of counter space. Foundation bottles, 3 different brands. Lipsticks standing like little soldiers. Palettes of eyeshadow, brushes and cups, cotton pads everywhere. My toothbrush had been moved to the back corner, behind a bottle of setting spray, as if it were an afterthought in my own bathroom. I photographed it all. The guest room, Aggie's craft room, Henry used to call it, because that was where I'd set up my sewing machine and my quilting frame, now served as Lydia's walk-in closet. Racks of clothes, shoes lined against every wall, shopping bags from stores I'd never heard of. I photographed that too. The kitchen. I opened the refrigerator. Every item purchased by me. I pulled the receipt from my wallet. $243.87 from Fry's Food 3 days ago. Photographed the food, then the receipt beside it. The electric bill sat on the counter where I'd left it. $287.14. My name at the top. Never reimbursed. I photographed that as well. Back in my bedroom by 6:30, I transferred every photo to my laptop, created folders organized by date and category. This would be my evidence. Undeniable, documented, the kind of record that holds up not because it's dramatic, but because it's thorough. Over the next 2 weeks, I became methodical about it in a way that surprised even me. I went through my filing cabinet, the one Henry had organized with color-coded tabs that I'd maintained since his death, and pulled documents I'd kept for years. The house deed, purchased 1985, paid off in full in 2018. My name alone, Henry had put only my name on the deed when we refinanced in 2010, a decision I hadn't understood at the time but now recognized as another act of quiet protection. Property tax records, all current, all paid by me. Utility bills going back 3 years, every single one showing 0 contribution from Lydia's family. I created a spreadsheet on my laptop. Every loan to Derek went into the document with dates and amounts. $500 for car repairs, May 2022. $1,200 for emergency dental work, August 2022, though I never saw any evidence of dental treatment. $2,000 for what Derek called an investment opportunity in November 2022, which turned out to be a fantasy football league buy-in he'd lied about. $800 for new tires, February 2023. On and on, month after month. I added formulas, watched the total climb. By the time I finished, the number at the bottom of the spreadsheet read $18,500. $18,500. The actual repayment column contained nothing but zeros. Not a single dollar returned. On March 25th, when Lydia left for her part-time job at the dental office on Scottsdale Road, and Derek drove off to what he called networking meetings, and Brooke left to meet friends somewhere, I installed the camera. I'd researched Arizona law carefully. Single-party consent state for recording. My house, my property, my legal right to secure it. I'd found a system online that disguised itself as a smoke detector. Ordered it from Amazon with 2-day shipping. $47.99. I stood on a step stool in the living room, the old smoke detector in one hand and the new unit in the other, and I hesitated. This was my daughter's home too. At least she'd made it hers. And here I was, preparing to record her like a suspect, like a stranger I didn't trust. Because I didn't trust her. That realization sat in my stomach like a stone. You spend 43 years loving someone into existence, carrying them, feeding them, driving them to school, sitting up with them through fevers and nightmares and that terrible bout of pneumonia when she was 9. And then one day you're standing on a step stool installing a hidden camera because that person stole from you and you need proof. Henry's letter was in my nightstand drawer, 15 feet away. Some people don't want to be saved. They want to be given to. I mounted the camera, tested the connection on my phone. Perfect view of the couch, the kitchen entrance, most of the main floor. The image was sharp, clear, undeniable. I felt guilt like a low hum, the kind of background noise you learn to work through. But I also felt something stronger, the certainty that if I didn't protect myself, no one else would. Henry was gone, and the people living in my house had made it very clear that my protection was not their concern. The recordings proved valuable quickly. March 29th. I sat at my bedroom desk, door locked, headphones in, watching footage on my laptop. Lydia's voice came through with perfect clarity. I can't believe she spent $1,200 getting that necklace back. That's our money. That's money that should be going to this family, not some pawn shop. Derek, from the couch, not looking up from his phone. She's being selfish. Old people get like that. Possessive. Paranoid. My uncle went the same way. When this house is ours, first thing I'm doing is gutting this kitchen. Maybe knock out that wall to the dining room. Open concept. This place is stuck in 1985. Lydia. Might not have to wait too long. Derek. What do you mean? She's 67. Blood pressure issues. How many years has she really got left? 5? 10? And she's not exactly taking care of herself. Derek laughed softly. So we wait. We wait, and we make sure the will stays exactly where it is. I saved the clip. Labeled it evidence_0329_inheritance_discussion.mp4. Another clip. April 1st. Brooke on the phone, sitting on the stairs, voice carrying with the casual cruelty of someone who has never once considered that walls have ears. My grandma is such a pain. She got all weird about Mom selling some old necklace. Like it's just a necklace. Her friend's voice faint. Why'd your mom sell it? We needed Hawaii money. Grandma wouldn't give it to us, so Mom took care of it. Honestly, I'll be glad when this house is ours and we don't have to deal with her drama anymore. She's so exhausting. Saved, labeled, added to the folder. And then, at 2:14 in the morning on April 2nd, the camera captured something I hadn't expected. Lydia, alone, sitting at the kitchen table in the dark, no lights on, just the faint glow of the microwave clock casting green shadows across her face. She held a coffee mug in both hands, staring at nothing. And she was crying. Not the crying I'd seen her perform. The theatrical tears she'd deployed since childhood whenever she wanted something. This was different. Silent. Her shoulders trembling slightly, her jaw clenched tight, the tears running down her cheeks unchecked. She didn't wipe them. She just sat there, in my dark kitchen, at 2 in the morning, weeping like a woman who had lost something she couldn't name. After 3 minutes, she stopped, wiped her face with the back of her hand, took a sip of coffee, stood up, and by the time she walked out of frame, her face was the mask again. Hard, controlled, calculating. Like watching someone put on armor. I watched that clip 4 times. I saved it with the others, but I didn't label it as evidence. I didn't know what to label it. Proof that my daughter was still human? Evidence that somewhere beneath the cruelty and the entitlement and the schemes, there was still a woman in pain? It didn't change what I had to do, but it made doing it feel like surgery. Necessary, life-saving, and brutal. April 3rd, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I sat across from Margaret Sullivan in her office on the 12th floor of a building downtown, the Phoenix skyline visible through her window. Margaret was the kind of woman I'd always admired. Mid-50s, silver streak and dark hair pulled back in a clean twist, business suit that fit like it had been made for her, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She shook my hand the way women of our generation shake hands, firmly, looking you in the eye, telling you without words that she was serious, and you should be too. Mrs. Winthrop, tell me what's going on. I placed my evidence folder on her desk. It was thick by then. Photographs, spreadsheets, printed screenshots, video files on a flash drive, property documents, bank statements. 3 weeks of methodical work. My daughter and her family have been living in my house for 3 years, I said. They don't pay rent. They don't contribute to utilities or groceries or maintenance. My son-in-law hasn't worked in 4 years. They sold my late husband's necklace, the only keepsake I had, for $800 to fund a vacation. They're waiting for me to die so they can inherit everything. I said it plainly. No tears, no dramatic pauses, just facts, the way I used to present patient histories during shift changes at the hospital. Margaret opened the folder, reviewed documents one by one, watched video clips on my laptop with headphones, examined the spreadsheet. 20 minutes of near silence. Finally, she looked up. Mrs. Winthrop, this documentation is excellent. Were you in law enforcement? Emergency room nurse, 25 years. A small, knowing smile. That explains it. Under Arizona law, your daughter's family are tenants at will. You can establish formal rental terms at any time. If they refuse, we have grounds for eviction. How long does eviction take? If they contest it, and they will, maybe 3 months. But with your evidence, I don't think it'll take that long. Most people leave when they realize you're serious and you have a lawyer who's more serious. I touched the necklace under my blouse, Henry's presence still guiding me. My retainer is $3,000. That's fine. She studied me. You're certain you want to do this? She's your daughter. My husband warned me this would happen. I should have listened sooner. I signed the retainer agreement with a steady hand. The war had officially started. The week between signing Margaret's retainer and receiving the rental agreement was the longest of my life. Not because I was afraid, because I was waiting, and I've never been good at waiting. In the ER, waiting means someone is dying. Meanwhile, I had other preparations to make. On April 7th, I drove to the office of Thomas Green, an estate attorney Margaret had recommended. His practice occupied the second floor of a quiet building near Camelback Mountain. Thomas reviewed my existing will, everything to Lydia, drafted 5 years ago when I still believed she was the daughter I'd raised, and set it aside. You're certain about these changes? I thought about the clip of Lydia saying, "How many years has she really got left?" Completely certain. I initialed each page. 3 beneficiaries, the Phoenix Homeless Coalition, the Memory Research Foundation, and the Arizona Elder Rights Advocacy Center. Lydia would receive nothing. The relevant section read, "To my daughter, Lydia Winthrop Caldwell, I leave nothing, as she has already received substantial financial support during my lifetime and has demonstrated through her actions that she values my assets more than our relationship." Thomas witnessed my signature, applied his notary seal. Walking out, I felt the weight of what I'd just done. Not regret, but gravity. You don't disinherit your only child without feeling the earth shift beneath you. Margaret's rental agreement arrived on April 9th. Rent, $1,500 monthly, 50% of utility costs. Respectful behavior toward the property owner. 30-day notice. On April 10th at 2 in the afternoon, Deborah Klein, Notary Public, arrived at my front door. "Mrs. Caldwell, I'm here to serve you with a rental agreement for this property." Lydia snatched the document. $1,500 a month? This is insane. You're not required to agree, only to acknowledge you've received it. I'm not signing anything. Deborah made a notation. Service is complete regardless. You have 30 days. Lydia whirled on me. We're your family. This house belongs to us. This house belongs to me. The deed is in my name. You are tenants. Derek emerged from the living room. His face went deep red. You're not thinking clearly, Agatha. Maybe you need a doctor to evaluate your mental state. My mental state is fine. We'll see what a judge says. Competency hearing. Guardianship. You're welcome to try. After Deborah left, the silence between us felt like the space between a lightning flash and the thunder that follows. The terms are reasonable, I said. Below market rate for this neighborhood. We're not paying you rent. Lydia's voice broke. Not in our own home. Then you need to leave. You have 30 days. The days that followed were the worst of it. Worse than the morning I found the empty box. Worse than hearing Derek say dead people don't need jewelry. Because now the hostility wasn't hidden. It was open, constant, filling every room of the house like smoke. Lydia launched her emotional campaign, knocking on my bedroom door at odd hours, clutching tissues. "Mom, please, the stress is killing me. I gave up everything to be here with you after Dad died." I looked at her performance and felt 2 things simultaneously. the recognition that it was a performance, and the ache of remembering when it wouldn't have been. When Lydia cried as a child, I felt it in my own body. When she scraped her knee at 7, I carried her 6 blocks home. "You have 29 days, I said, and closed the door. Brooke took the fight online. Daily posts on social media. Stories about her confused grandmother, her poor mother being mistreated. My neighbor, Bill Patterson, approached me at the mailbox. "Agatha, I saw some posts online. Your granddaughter said..." "Well, is everything all right?" "I'm establishing rental terms for my property, Bill. That's all." His expression showed he didn't quite believe me. Across the street, Nancy Webb saw me, turned, and went inside without her usual wave. I felt the isolation settle over me like a second skin. This was the part nobody warns you about. Not the legal battle, but the loneliness. Standing in your own front yard and realizing the people who should be on your side have decided it's safer not to get involved. Then Derek crossed the final line. April 14th. I was making tea in the kitchen. He entered through the archway, standing too close, blocking my path to the door. When I tried to step around him, his hand came up and shoved me backward. Not hard enough to knock me down. Hard enough that I stumbled against the counter, caught myself on the granite edge, felt it bite into my lower back. Hard enough that my heart rate spiked the way it used to spike in the ER when a patient turned violent. That primal recognition that you are in danger. "Careful, old woman." His breath smelled like beer and corn chips. "Accidents happen at your age." I was 67 years old, 5'4", 132 pounds. He was 45, 6'1", probably 210. I was afraid. I want you to hear that clearly. I was afraid in my own kitchen, in the house Henry and I had built together. Afraid of the man my daughter had married. I said nothing, took my tea, walked to my bedroom, locked the door. The camera had captured everything. His hand making clear contact, my body forced backward, his satisfied smirk. I emailed Margaret the footage. Her response came in 4 minutes. "Call me immediately. This changes everything." The push is assault, Agatha. The mail tampering is a federal offense, and the bank fraud attempt is elder financial exploitation. Because that had happened too. On April 3rd, the same day I'd met Margaret, Lydia had walked into Bank of Arizona and attempted to access my account, claiming she was acting on my behalf. The bank denied it. She tried again on April 15th, claiming I'd granted her power of attorney. Denied again. Flagged as potential elder fraud. "What does this mean?" I asked. "It means we're not waiting 30 days. I'm filing for emergency eviction based on domestic violence and financial abuse. Court hearing within 2 weeks. And then came Lydia's countermove. A guardianship petition. Filing with the court claiming I was mentally incompetent. Margaret called me with a voice more serious than I'd ever heard from her. "Agatha, listen carefully. If they build even a thin case, the court could freeze your ability to sell the house. Everything we've built could stall." For the first time since I'd found Henry's letter, I felt the ground shift beneath me. 3 years of being told I was confused, forgetful, not thinking clearly had left marks I hadn't acknowledged. Gaslighting works that way. Even when you know what it is, it plants a seed of doubt that grows in the dark. Margaret arranged an evaluation with Dr. Sarah Patel, a geriatric specialist at Mayo Clinic Scottsdale. I answered questions, solved puzzles, recalled word lists. And the whole time a voice in my head whispered, "What if she says you're not okay? What if Lydia wins?" Dr. Patel's report. Cognitively sharp, physically healthy for age, fully competent to manage personal and financial affairs. Guardianship petition dismissed. I sat in my bedroom and cried. Not from sadness. From relief so overwhelming it felt like coming up for air after being held underwater so long you'd forgotten what breathing felt like. The weeks between the guardianship dismissal and the court date passed in a strange, suspended quiet. Lydia and Derek stopped speaking to me almost entirely. They communicated through silence. Doors closed harder than necessary. Food left unwashed in the sink. The thermostat adjusted to temperatures I found uncomfortable. Small cruelties. The kind that don't leave bruises but wear you down like water on stone. I spent those weeks reviewing evidence with Margaret, preparing my testimony, and trying not to think about the fact that I was about to ask a judge to remove my only child from my home. Some nights I took out Henry's letter and read it again. You've always been thoughtful, methodical, careful. I held on to those words like handrails. May 2nd, the courthouse downtown, 9:45 in the morning. I wore the dark suit I'd worn to Henry's funeral. It still fit. I'd lost weight these past years. Grief does that, strips you down to what's left when everything else has been taken away. Margaret met me in the hallway, 2 accordion folders thicker than when we'd started. We have everything: video, financial records, medical documentation, all of it. Lydia arrived with Robert Carlson, her attorney, a man in a slightly too large suit who looked like he already knew he was on the losing side, and Derek and Brooke. We sat on opposite sides of the hallway. No one spoke. At 10 o'clock, Judge Catherine Harlow took her bench. Steel gray hair, reading glasses, the kind of eyes that had spent decades separating truth from performance. Ms. Sullivan, you may proceed. Margaret played the clip of Derek shoving me. The courtroom went silent, that particular quality of silence when a room full of people collectively holds its breath. She moved through the evidence systematically. The spreadsheet, $18,500 in unreturned loans. My medical records, blood pressure 152/95. The bank fraud attempts. The opened mail, each piece building on the last like bricks in a wall. Carlson stood. Your Honor, this is a family dispute. My client has been caring for her elderly mother, Mr. Carlson. Judge Harlow's voice could have cut glass. Assault is assault regardless of family relationship. The mail tampering is a federal offense. Please sit down. But Carlson had one more card. He called Lydia to the witness stand, and my daughter delivered the performance of her life. Tears streaming, voice breaking at precisely calibrated intervals. She spoke about losing her father, about moving in to be there for Mom. I just wanted to keep our family together, she whispered, pressing a tissue to her eyes. Mom was my hero growing up. She worked night shifts to pay for my school clothes. She was the strongest woman I knew, and now she's pushing me away. The courtroom was quiet. I felt the shift, that dangerous tilt when sympathy begins to flow toward the person crying. Judge Harlow's eyes moved from Lydia to me and back. Measuring. Margaret touched my arm. She stood. Your Honor, I'd like to play one final piece of evidence. Recorded April 20th, 2025. 11:07 p.m. The screen flickered. My kitchen, green glow of the microwave clock, Lydia and Derek at the table, and Lydia's voice, completely different from the one that had just been weeping on the stand. Cold, flat, strategic. Next step is guardianship. If the court declares her incompetent, we control everything. The house, the accounts, everything. Derek. And if that doesn't work? Then we wait. She's 67, high blood pressure. Won't be long. But before she goes, we need to make sure the will stays exactly where it is. Derek laughing softly. Maybe you should practice a few more tears for the judge. And Lydia smiled. A cold, clean smile. Tears always work. Mom's always been soft for tears. 43 years. Never failed once. Derek. What about this time? This time, too. Just needs time. The clip ended. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. On the witness stand, Lydia's face had gone the color of chalk. Her tears stopped completely, as if a switch had been flipped, which the video had just demonstrated was exactly how they worked. Judge Harlow removed her glasses, folded them slowly. I've reviewed all submitted evidence. The financial exploitation is clear. The video evidence shows a pattern of intimidation, harassment, and calculated manipulation. The testimony I just heard from the respondent is directly contradicted by her own recorded statements. She looked at Lydia, not with anger, with something worse, recognition. I'm granting the eviction. 30 days until August 1st. If you are not out by then, the sheriff's office will execute the order. I'm also referring the bank fraud and mail tampering evidence to the appropriate federal authorities. I sat beside Margaret with Henry's necklace warm against my chest, and I didn't feel victorious. I felt the way you feel after surgery, grateful it's over, aware that healing hasn't started yet, knowing that something necessary and terrible has been done. Outside the courtroom, Lydia approached me, face blotchy, mascara smeared. Mom, please. We'll change. We'll pay the rent. It's too late for that. Where are we supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. How can you be so cold? We're your family. I looked at her, saw Henry's features in her face, his jawline, his forehead, the shape of his eyes, but none of his warmth. You had 3 years after your father died to act like family. You chose to act like parasites instead. She recoiled, and I felt every word of it like a blade cutting my own mouth. I turned away before she could see my eyes filling, not with regret, with grief, for the little girl who used to bring me dandelions, for the woman that little girl never became. Margaret touched my arm. Agatha, we should go. We walked down the courthouse hallway together. Behind us, I heard Lydia begin to sob, and I kept walking. The weeks after the hearing passed in a strange gray silence. Nobody spoke. Nobody apologized. We existed in the same house like strangers sharing a waiting room, each counting the days until the other would be gone. Mid-May, I made my decision. I was standing at my bedroom window, watching the sunrise turn the Superstition Mountains pink and gold, and I realized I didn't want this house anymore. Not because of what it was still the house Henry and I had loved, but because of what it had become. A battlefield, a cage, a place where every room held a memory now stained by the people who had occupied it without gratitude or grace. I called Margaret. I want to sell the house. A pause. Then, that's radical, but strategically brilliant. Remove the asset they're fighting over entirely. She recommended James Whitfield, a real estate agent who handled difficult situations. He arrived May 20th, tall, early 40s, calm efficiency. Mrs. Winthrop, let's see what we're working with. Lydia appeared in the kitchen archway. Who are you? What are you doing? James didn't flinch. I'm a licensed real estate agent conducting a property assessment. Lydia turned to me. The color drained from her face. Mom, what's going on? I'm selling the house. No, I grew up here. This is my home. It's my house, my name on the deed, my decision. James's assessment. List at $385,000. I told him to do it. The for sale sign went up on a Friday, bright red and white, planted in the front yard like a flag. Katie and Ryan Brooks, early 30s, pre-approved, eager, made an offer within days. $383,000, $2,000 under asking. Accept it, I said. Speed matters more than $2,000. The weeks that followed were a countdown. Lydia's family stayed until the last possible day, as if leaving even 1 hour early would be an admission of defeat. July 19th, 1 day before the court deadline. A rental truck appeared in the driveway at 8 in the morning. I stayed in my bedroom with the door closed. I listened to the sounds of departure. Furniture scraping across hardwood floors. Boxes dropping. Lydia's sharp voice giving orders. Brooke complaining about heavy lifting. Through my window, neighbors watched from their yards. A knock at my door. I opened it. Lydia stood there, exhausted, defeated, covered in sweat and dust, dark circles under her eyes. She looked older than 43. Are you happy now? I didn't want this, Lydia. You forced it. I'll never forgive you. I don't need your forgiveness. I have your father's approval. That's enough. Her face hardened, then softened, then hardened again, like a signal flickering between 2 stations. And then she said something quiet, so quiet I almost missed it beneath the sound of Derek loading boxes outside. I just wanted you to love me more than this house. The words hit me like a physical blow, and in that moment, unbidden, I saw the clip from the camera. Lydia alone at 2 in the morning, crying silently in the dark kitchen, shoulders trembling, tears she didn't wipe away. The woman behind the armor. The little girl who felt unloved, just as Henry had written. I opened my mouth. I wanted to say, I always loved you more than the house, more than everything in it. I would have burned it down and slept in the ashes if it meant having my daughter back. But the daughter I wanted back hadn't existed in a very long time. And the woman in front of me, the one who sold her father's necklace, who plotted to have me declared incompetent, who calculated how many years I had left to live, that woman wouldn't hear love. She'd hear weakness. She'd hear an opening. So I said nothing. And Lydia turned away. The truck's engine roared to life. I watched from my window as it turned left at the end of the street and disappeared behind the oleander bushes Henry had planted our first spring in the house. The house was quiet in a way it hadn't been in 3 years. I walked through the empty rooms as evening light slanted through the windows. Every footstep echoed. In the living room, deep scratches scored the hardwood where furniture had been dragged. The guest room wall had a fist-sized hole. Derek's parting gift. The kitchen counter was stained. A cabinet door hung crooked. I photographed everything. Not because I planned to pursue damages, but the documentation felt necessary. Final proof of who they really were. August 15th, closing day. I met Katie and Ryan Brooks at the title company on Central Avenue. I signed page after page, my hand steady from decades of charting and medical forms and all the paperwork that constitutes a life lived responsibly. Katie slid an envelope across the table. "We wrote you something, for later." The title officer passed the keys to the young couple. Katie's eyes were bright. "Thank you for trusting us with your home." "Make it yours now," I said. "Fill it with something good." I walked out carrying only a small box of photographs and Henry's necklace around my neck. I didn't look back. That evening in my new apartment, a 2-bedroom unit in a quiet 55-plus community in Scottsdale, with a security gate and mountain views from the balcony, I opened Katie and Ryan's envelope. "Dear Mrs. Winthrop, we want you to know we understand the sacrifice you made. We'll fill your home with love and laughter. You gave us more than a house. You gave us a future. With gratitude, Katie and Ryan." I folded the letter and placed it in my desk drawer beside Henry's letter. 2 messages of hope from 2 different sources. I'd paid $195,000 for the apartment, cash, from the house sale and Henry's savings. No mortgage, no debt. The freedom of that was extraordinary. I changed my phone number the next day, gave the new one to Margaret, my doctor, and the complex security office. Nobody else. Lydia tried calling the old number, then texting, then calling from Derek's phone, from Brooks. I blocked each number as it appeared. Late August, a knock on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole. Lydia, alone this time, smaller than I'd seen her look in years. "Mom, I know you're in there. We made mistakes, but we're family. We're struggling. We can't afford—" A door opened down the hall. "Ma'am, if you don't leave, I'm calling security. This is my mother. She's not answering. You need to go." Footsteps retreating. Then silence. I stood 3 feet from the door, and I didn't feel guilt. I felt free. But I also felt a sadness so deep and so quiet that I knew it would never fully leave me. It would settle into the bedrock of who I was, the way Henry's death had settled. Not a wound that heals, but a landscape that changes. You don't get over losing your daughter. You just learn to live in the country that exists afterward. The apartment became mine in ways the house hadn't been in years. I transformed the 2nd bedroom into a workshop. Workbench against the wall, pegboard for tools, storage bins organized with the precision I'd once applied to medication carts. I bought oak lumber and began building a shadow box for Henry's necklace. Dovetail joints, the kind of work that requires patience and steady hands. Henry would have loved watching me do this. He was the engineer, but I was the one with the hands. He used to say that, "Aggie, you've got the hands. Mine just do math." When the shadow box was finished, I mounted Henry's necklace inside, the gold resting against dark velvet, the heart-shaped locket centered and lit by a small lamp. I hung it on my living room wall, in a place of honor where the afternoon light caught the gold and threw warm reflections across the room. September 2nd, nearly 3 years since Henry's death. I met Dorothy Mitchell at a Starbucks in Old Town Scottsdale, my closest friend from nursing, lost to me during the years Lydia's family consumed my life. Gray-haired and bright-eyed, waving from a corner table. "I tried calling you a few times over the years," Dorothy said. "Always went to voicemail. I was occupied. My daughter and her family moved in after Henry died." Understanding dawned immediately. "Ah, that kind of occupied." We talked for 2 hours, about Henry, about patients saved and lost, about the strange, quiet freedom of living alone by choice. "I'm on my own now," I said, "and it's the first time in 3 years that feels like a decision rather than a sentence." Dorothy grinned. "Good for you, Agatha. That wasn't living before." "No, but it is now. Chess next Thursday?" "Prepare to lose. We'll see about that." That evening I stood in my workshop. The shadow box was finished. The oak box I was building now had no specific purpose. Maybe a gift for Dorothy, maybe a keepsake for myself, Maybe just the pleasure of making something with my own hands for no reason other than the joy of it. I applied glue to the final joint, fitted the pieces together, ran my hand over the smooth wood, feeling the grain beneath my fingertips. The satisfaction was profound, not triumphant, not vindictive, but whole. I cleaned my tools, swept the sawdust, turned off the shop light. In the living room, Henry's necklace glowed softly in the evening light. The gold caught the last rays of the setting sun, throwing tiny reflections across the wall like stars, like promises kept. I walked to the window. The Scottsdale Mountains darkened against an orange sky. My phone sat silent on the kitchen counter. My number, my contacts, my control. Tomorrow I'd meet Dorothy for chess. Next week I'd finish another project. The month after that, who knew? The future was unwritten, and for the first time in years that felt like freedom rather than fear. I touched my shirt where the necklace used to rest against my chest. It was on the wall now, visible, honored, but no longer armor. I didn't need armor anymore. I learned something at 67 that I wish I'd known at 23 when Henry first clasped that necklace around my neck. Love doesn't protect you by making you strong. Love protects you by making you honest. Honest about who people are, honest about what you deserve, honest about when to hold on and when to let go. The greatest victory wasn't the courtroom. It wasn't the house sale or the new apartment or the look on Lydia's face when the judge read the ruling. The greatest victory was this: standing in my own kitchen, in my own home, cooking dinner for one. Exactly enough. I smiled. A real smile. A peaceful smile. And I turned toward the stove to make my dinner. Just for myself. Exactly enough.